Hello and welcome to this conversation at ETHRWorld We Talk Talent series with Shailesh Singh, Senior Director and Chief People Officer at Max Life Insurance. Shailesh has over 25 years of experience in delivering world-class people agenda and culture, consistently committed to enhancing culture, creating value for teams and organizations, raising engagement levels and developing talent and leadership. Strongly inclined towards the art of leadership and always believed in empowering people to turn into leaders and for them to further empower people around them. In the current role, Shailesh is responsible for developing and implementing successful agile strategies that support long-term growth and transformation of the organization. He is a firm supporter of making company values come alive through leadership role modeling and embodiment of values via business and HR processes. We are so glad to have you with us today, Shailesh, at this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shailesh. So we'll just jump into the conversation and I put forth the first question to you. So we would like you to share a brief overview of the disruption and transformation that is happening in your industry particularly.
I've been in this sector now for 10 years. I used to serve General Electric, GE earlier, served GE for a fairly good time and then joined here. So it's 10 years now. I've seen the sector for a good length and through different cycles. I will call out a few things that stand out actually. The first and foremost is the scale and growth of the sector. Even in COVID times, this is one sector that stands out from a growth perspective. Apeksha, while many others have shrunk and suffered, and we have also gone through some tough times, but I think one thing that has not stopped here in insurance sector is growth. And the scale from, if I go back to 2011 when I joined here to today, is significantly higher today. And across 300 plus cities, for example, we operate, and not just us, the bigger players operate across hundreds of cities and have 30,000-40,000 employees. So very large. So scale and growth stand out, for the sector. What has not changed, however, when I think of disruption to your question, especially in the last 2 years, is when I joined the sector, I found that especially at the feet on street, the front end sales, there was a challenge of managing attrition in the sector. And post COVID, I think we have seen attrition raise its head actually across sectors, not just this, but all other sectors. And that certainly is some sort of a disruption. And put that with the ask on growth, with the ask of scaling up, which this sector has, it gets a little compounded. So clearly there is one disruption that's coming post-COVID, which is the attrition that the sector has faced. And I think, it's partly to do with the pent-up demand over the last 2-3 years, which is showing in this manner. And I think it's getting better and should get better. So the other thing that has somewhat changed is this sector used to be a largely touch and feel connect sector, where if you want to sell a policy to a customer, you must meet the customer, you must know the customer, and oftentimes sales used to be through agents, and therefore through networks sales used to happen. That is no longer the case. One big change that the sector has undergone now is actually selling through banks and branches, and we have a partner in Axis Bank, and actually a co-promoter now with Max, and we are amongst the largest here. So clearly that's one change that has happened. A lot of sale now happens through bank branches because there's a consolidated relationship, and also perhaps this gives it gives a lot of comfort to customers when they have to deal with one entity or one user ID password. It makes their life a little better from that perspective. However, our own proprietary channels continue to be very, very vibrant. So, our sales through agency and some other channels continue to be vibrant. One other proprietary channel that has now truly been transformed in the last 5 years is the digital channel. And we are in the top performing, digital channels in this sector. But I must also say that it is not just us. Actually, digital is growing at a very, very fast pace for all the major players in the sector. And that's clearly, one other transformational change that's happening. People are increasingly prefer preferring to buy through digital means, whether it is a mobile or through the website. Products are largely getting standardized, and we're making life easier for customers to choose the product they want digitally, with minimal sort of assistance, manual interventions, which used to be the case. The good news here is, in spite of all of this, India has such a large population that the insurance penetration still continues to be low. So from a potential of growth perspective, there's a lot of potential for the sector to grow. And that's the other thing that's happening from a transformation perspective, where the action is now shifting from tier 1 to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. As the income levels continue to grow in India, I think we are clearly seeing that the markets in tier 2 and tier 3 cities are growing and maturing. And that's clearly one other trend that we are seeing. One more change, there are many actually, but I'm just calling out the most prominent ones. And one other prominent change that we notice is insurance, which used to be largely a push product, where you have to explain to people because they aren't aware. There's no issue really. The product's not inferior, but people haven't valued their life really earlier in India. And with awareness, the need to protect your family and your interests, I think people are now increasingly getting more and more aware, and therefore it's getting better. But from this being a push product now, I think it's becoming more something that's driven by your own knowledge, your own awareness, your need to protect yourself and your family interests, and that's changing. So from a push to a pull, and I don't think we are there yet fully, but it's an evolving situation. Similar to the Western world, where they are a lot more involved and the insurance penetration is higher. But India is going there and moving in that direction. Those are some of the top trends, that one is seeing currently for the sector from a disruption and transformation perspective, Apeksha.
Great to know that, Shailesh, and India is, indeed growing in a lot of sectors that we would like to talk about in our different conversations with different industry leaders. So, building on what you have just said, with your kind of extensive experience in the industry, you have, seen transformations which you have just talked about. So, this was about the industry. If you want to go a little specifics, go into the specifics of organization, we would like to understand the changes that have, this pandemic has brought about in the hiring part of it. How has your hiring strategy changed concerning sourcing, selection, and pipeline management in your organization post the pandemic?
And I will link it to my earlier response in terms of some of the disruptions and transformations that we are seeing. For example, I talked about the fact that the scale and growth have been transformed in the sector. The fact that action is moving out to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The most recent phenomenon of COVID-19, I think, is also likely to leave a lasting imprint in terms of how we are going to work in the future. If I look at all of those in the backdrop now, clearly, we are seeing that the cost of hiring and retention of talent is going up. The cost of hiring is going up, and retention costs are going up, and this is across across the sector. Most recently, especially after the challenge of attrition that many sectors are facing. So I will I'll share with you what we are doing to be able to handle that. Also, the other thing that most organizations are accepting today, including us, is acceptance of flexi work. And while this in the normal course would have taken a few years to get to where the Western world has got, but clearly COVID-19 has expedited some of that changes, and it's happening now much faster. What we would have done in 10 years, I think, has been done perhaps in a year or two. And therefore, acceptance of flexi work in its different forms. I don't necessarily mean, flexi work could mean varying your start of the day, end of the day time. It could mean working from home. It could mean hybrid, where you come to office in a couple of days. It could be completely remote working, all of those. But acceptance of different forms, I think, is happening across the sector, including, insurance sector. There's a second change that I think, is happening. And therefore, acceptance of candidates who are not necessarily in the location that you would earlier wanted them to be is much better now. In supervisors, in HR, in the enterprises, we are continuing to accept people. There are roles where we would have traditionally hired people out of Gurgaon or Delhi, and they're sitting in Mumbai, and we are absolutely okay to work with that arrangement. That's the way the world is going to be. So that's clearly one change that we are seeing from a sourcing perspective. In the earlier situation, we would have perhaps said no, to hiring, some of those cases. We are a lot more flexible on that one. It's just the need of the hour. And also COVID-19 has helped to remove some of those, blankers. So acceptance of virtual and acceptance of helping people balance their lives better is clearly another trend that's impacting our sourcing, strategy. The other thing that's happening is developing internal talent, because the cost of hiring replacements is going up. We anyway, have been an organization that has focused heavily on culture and talent, both these themes. That has not changed, for Max Life. And in times like these, it helps when we focus on our people, our talent, and we move them around. So talent mobility is a big theme for us. We move people around so that they are better prepared, they are ready to change roles and learn skills to be able to be deployed, into new roles, rather than go out and hire, where there is cost of hiring, plus there is time involved, effort involved, and then ultimately settling time, and then person settle, may not settle, culture matches, mismatches, all of those. When we move internal talent, we take care of all of that. So talent mobility, internal talent mobility, is a big focus area for us. So therefore, I would call out these two in particular post COVID. One, our ability to sort of understand and practice more flexi work in different forms, and second, focus more on internal talent on an ongoing basis. And we do this at all levels, actually, where supervisors lead this agenda, and they every year make an effort to identify successors for key roles and prepare a development plan to get them ready for those. These, I think, are clearly two biggest changes for us, from the perspective of how our hiring strategy is evolving post COVID, Apeksha.
That's great to know, Shailesh, and I think this is a call of the day for most organizations as well. So while we're talking about your hiring agenda, to build upon and get into the details of it a little more, what kind of skills do you look for by hiring across functions these days? There's been a lot of talks about behavioral skills, which has coming up ahead of the technical skills or hard skills, if we can call them. So there has been a shift in the kind of people and skills we are looking at hiring in the organizations. What is your take on it? How are you going about it in your organization?
This one, there has been minimal change on this one for us. We have always looked at a combination of these, whether it's technical, soft skills, or behavioral. For us, it's a combination, has always been a combination. However, we have given preference to and premium to behavior and soft skills always. And that remains unchanged. Many companies who particularly take a short-term view of the enterprise and success tend to look at more here and now, and therefore technical skills may take priority, not in our case. And it doesn't mean that those are not important. They are important, but if we have to choose between the two, for us, leadership, values, culture match, attitude, they take priority for us, at all levels, and once that's sorted, and we feel the person can settle and work in our environment and is groomable, it makes it easy. And then, of course, then we look at the technical side of it, which is important to be delivered to the customers, for whatever role that person is going to be, employed in. The other thing that, so therefore, focusing on values, focusing on attitude remains paramount in our context. That's number one. Number two, one of our values is growth mindset. And growth mindset, implicit in that, is a learner mindset, the ability to learn. We have now, over the last few years, begun to place disproportionate focus on this one, because the world is changing so fast across functions, products, technology, market, customers, that we need people who can change gears quickly, people who can adopt quickly, people who are thinkers, people who are sensitive and alive to the environment that they operate in, people who are not necessarily just order takers and executioners, but people who are connected and can structure their own solutions, stitch their inputs, and create value for the end customer. So people who are thinkers, people who are learners across levels and across functions, those get a priority in our context very clearly. And that's something that we are clearly looking to drive more and more. Learner mindset. We encourage our people, our leaders, to be curious, to ask questions, to challenge the status quo, and always demonstrate a learner mindset. What was good yesterday may not necessarily be good today or tomorrow, therefore. So that's the kind of mindset that clearly is, those are kind of skill sets, attitude, orientations that we are encouraging today.
Sure, Shailesh. And, we have talked about on the pointers which would be, very beneficial for other industry leaders, other head HR, CHROs in different verticals and different sectors who will be listening to this conversation. But something for the young professionals who will be, logging in to listen to this conversation, they'll be very keen to know, and obviously all the others also, about the kind of scenario you are envisioning in this sector about the jobs. How do you see jobs evolving in long term and short term in your sector?
As I said in response to the earlier question, I think first and foremost, there is clear obsolescence because of fast pace of change in all that anyone is doing today in this sector as well. Okay. And therefore, the need to be a clear thinker, the need to keep things simple, the need to perhaps go more digital are the call of the hour. And I would encourage, all who are, aspirants to take up careers going forward, and particularly in this sector, that they must be prepared for very fast-paced change. They must pick up digital skills and orientation. And gone are the days when, we had the luxury of converting manual to digital. Today, it is born digital in most places. You must come with a certain, level of skill set, and you must have the ability to quickly raise the bar on digital or digitally in terms of whatever you are doing. Doesn't matter. Function agnostic, the ability to digitally, do, simplify, and create value for the end customer is good. So that's one. Second, one of our values, and I think important perhaps for all sectors, is superior customer connect. Any enterprise is about creating value for the end customer. So the need for youngsters to understand the nuts and bolts of a business and how is value being created in that business to sustain success, I think is very important. And that happens best when you connect with customers. It doesn't happen necessarily from just sitting on a laptop or sitting from office. Your ability to move around, understand the different functions, what roles they play, what is it that a customer looking for, and therefore connecting with customers on an ongoing basis to firsthand understand, their need and be able to craft value for them, create value for them is going to be important. Second, superior customer connect. Third, I mentioned earlier, the learner mindset. They must have learner mindset. That's how jobs are evolving. Jobs are changing fast, and therefore continue to learn and be open. Fourth, ability to handle scale. Increasingly, we find organizations in India, businesses are getting bigger and bigger. So the ability to handle scale will be important. While there are some startups, quite a few actually in India, which are doing well, but please remember the pace of their growth is very, very fast. You could pick any of these startups, 5 years back and today where they are, they're large, they're really big. So ability to standardize and then be able to scale that up quickly and is going to be important for, it will be an ask of the jobs in times to come. And then I think investing in yourself by becoming a better people leader, I think it will be another ask. I clearly see that need. While digital will help, while functional skills will help, but what's perennial and doesn't change is the ability to be a good people leader, because you alone cannot deliver. You need a team to deliver. And what kind of a team do you acquire or build or develop and groom, I think is going to be important. And your success will be contingent on that. So I think I would certainly say that's the way the sector is evolving. That's the way most sectors will be moving to. It's important for youngsters coming into these sectors to understand this and tune themselves to develop these orientations and skills.
So, Shailesh, those were some very wise words, and I'm sure they'll help the young aspirants to make wise career decisions and take their careers in the right direction. So, thank you for that. While we are in the last leg of this conversation, and you did talk about the internal engagements and internal people management and how to help them grow their careers within their organizations. We would like you to, come back to it a little more and detail out some specifics about your employee engagement strategy and how that has changed or maybe have transformed into some kind of a with the digital touch and all post the pandemic, because it has obviously the impact is pervasive. It has been always. So I'm sure the employee engagement strategy would have been transformed into something else. So if you can throw some light on that.
And I will deal with this element at two levels. First, the model, and then the changing shades and color of the model. The model in at least Max Life today is very clear. Engagement in our context is really anchored by the supervisor. This is not a pure HR agenda. Okay, it's largely, and we really bank on that. We develop our supervisors, we talk to them, we engage with them so that because they are closest to the employee. So first and foremost, engagement in our context is clearly led, anchored by a supervisor. Each supervisor has a role to play. They understand, the employee needs, and therefore they are best placed to engage in that conversation and take that forward. However, what HR and leadership do is they bring progressive policies. They bring world-class policies and practices on an ongoing basis every year on the shelf and help supervisors pick up those, deploy those. So there is an enterprise, role where HR and leadership have a role, and then there is a functional role that supervisors have in terms of deploying that, out in the field, with their teams. That's the model. In terms of changing contours and colors of what we are experiencing, I think today engagement is no longer limited to one channel or one model. Today engagement is on the go. So how do we engage our employees so that they understand the vision and mission of the organization, they understand the culture and values of the organization, they understand the job and ask of them, from the enterprise perspective. At all points of time, there are multiple channels at play. Many of them could be digital. No longer do we bank on one particular channel. So for example, we have a internal platform called eCube, which is company intranet, where all functions have a page and employees can go, and it's a repository. So people can go and find out, about, let's say, HR has a page. So HR policies, practices, culture, all of that. Someone go to a finance page and find out about financials of the company or, practices, and similarly CSR, and each products you can find out and learn. So there is also another more vibrant, platform, which is called Workplace, which is a Facebook, platform that we have adopted for corporates. And that's more an engaging platform where you can ask your questions, you can generate conversations, and so on. There's an employee app which is useful for discharging your day-to-day activities, your attendance, your interview comments, your very basic hygiene, whatever you have to do to your pay slips, your leave balances, all of those, they're shouldered through that. You can search with keywords, find out policies in the employee app, and so on. So there are multiple channels. What is key is to offer channels and let people learn at their pace, at their rhythm. There are learning platforms that we have where you can go and pick up a course and you can resume learning later. You find time 30 minutes today, you can complete the balance 30 minutes tomorrow. It's shorter, small modules. There are leadership snippets, clips that are posted to these platforms, all of those. So it's a mix today. It is no longer just one platform, one way of engaging and top down communication. Today it's a bottoms up, top down, across functions, collaborative platforms, learning from each other. Choose your own pace. You can do it from home, you can do it over the weekend, you can do it from office, but offer choices of learning and rhythm, choices of learning and rhythm. And these can, the topics can vary from learning basics of the business to picking up leadership skills, to learning the products, to selling skills, to getting trained in terms of how do you sell a particular product, and what kind of nuances, insights can you provide to customers. All of that is today available. And therefore engaging with employees all the time, both ways, one from a functional perspective and second from a leadership and culture perspective, so that they are tuned and we bind it like a family all the time, and we are able to motivate them to be able to deliver to the customer ask and value. That I think is the rhythm today and the model today in terms of how we are approaching it. And I expect the pace to get only faster, and it will be more of pull than push. and therefore whoever, whether us and others can get uh, products or create means for employees to enjoy learning, for employees to get pulled with items of interest and learning and insights. I think that's going to be key. Gone are the days when you could put people and push them to sit in classrooms, all day and teach them and expect, that kind of attention won't happen. We are learning, so we are evolving with times, Apeksha, and it's getting better. It's getting better.
Yes, indeed, Shailesh, we are learning and we are evolving, and we have learned a lot in this conversation with you. We are taking a lot of insights, a lot of practical learnings out from this conversation back home, and we would hope to implement it. And I'm sure the viewers who are listening into the conversation will have a lot of key takeaways to ponder over. So thank you, Shailesh, for this very interesting and insightful conversation, and for joining us today at this episode of We Talk Talent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation too, Apeksha. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shailesh.